It is just past 10 o'clock. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Matt Williams. I am the Business Services Specialist here at the Addison Public Library. And today we're going to be talking about cover letters, which are very crucial to the job search process. We'll go over pretty much everything about cover letters. So let's just jump right in. Alrighty, so we'll go over an introduction on what a cover letter is, why you need one, why it's important to have one in your job application. We'll go over the structure of a cover letter. We'll go over tailoring your cover letter to the job that you are applying to. We'll also go over common mistakes that job seekers make in their cover letters and how you can avoid them. And then we'll open the floor up to Q&A. But before I jump into the content of this, I wanted to go over just a little housekeeping. This program is being recorded and will be shared with all those that registered, as well as posted to our YouTube channel, probably by Monday or Tuesday next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat if you're joining us on Zoom. If you're joining us on Twitch, feel free to put any questions you have in that chat, and I will answer them as they come up, or we can answer them at the end. So yeah, let's just jump right into the introduction. So what is a cover letter? A cover letter is a complement to your resume. Um, they are designed to expand the content that is in your resume, or expand on the content in your resume. Um, because as we know, a resume is very valuable real estate that we don't necessarily get into all of the details of maybe an accomplishment that we had that we want to tell our next employer, or we might be missing some details in that. So your cover letter is the place where you can put all those details to explain the story a little bit better, explain the content of your resume a little bit in a more fleshed out sense. And it gives you that opportunity then for the employer to know everything that you want to share that's pertinent to the job you're applying for. Now, with that being said, it still is a brief one-page document um, that is used to expand on your experiences and the highlights in your resume. Uh, in in your cover letter, you want to highlight the reasons why you're applying for the job and why you want to work at this specific company. So, for example, you are applying for an accountant role. Why do you want to work as an accountant in in company A over all of company A's competitors? So why this one company in particular? And you also want to emphasize your personality in your cover letter. Um, that's a a great place to put some fun anecdotes that you have maybe about work or things like that. It's just another sense for the future employer that you want to apply to understand you as a complete individual. So the purpose of a cover letter. Cover letters should showcase your professional, educational, and personal qualifications for the job that you're applying for. Now, say you have a varying background where you worked in one type of industry, where you've worked in multiple types of industries, and now you want to apply for one that you may have worked in the past, like an industry you have worked in the past, or it's a completely new industry. In that sense, you want to really focus on your transferable skills. And those are going to be your soft skills. So your customer service type skills, your communication, time management, organization, all of those types of skills that can be applicable to any industry is what you're going to want to really highlight in that. It is also important to remember that you should expand on what is in your resume by using specific examples. Share a story or two, share a success, share a failure, and what you learned from that failure maybe, just to show that you are that you are a dynamic individual and that we all are human and we make mistakes. But what's really important is from a potential future employer perspective, well, what did you learn from those mistakes and how can we minimize those mistakes going forward, or how can we avoid them if a similar situation comes up? A cover letter answers two main questions. It answers why you and why them. So it answers why you are the best candidate for the position, and it answers why they're the best company for you to work at. So the why you question, why you're the best candidate, it puts a focus on your most relevant qualifications and what values that you can bring to the company. And it might be something as little as you are great at scheduling staff, and they might need someone who is really good at scheduling. So it could be something really minor as that, or it could be something on a larger scale where it's saying like you have worked and are really good at strategic planning and strategic initiatives. So high level executive level thoughts. They might need that as well. And why them? It's in the why them question. It's important to include why you want to work for that particular organization. So back to the accounting firm example. Why do you want to work as an accountant at company A rather than all of company A's competitors? You want to avoid using slang, abbreviations, or casual tone. And be sure to make a connection to the company. Explain why you relate to them. So it could be something as you relate to the company's mission, which we'll talk about a little later in the PowerPoint. Or it could be that you are really passionate about the work that they're doing, you like the environment, you've heard good things from other people that have worked there. All of those things. You just want to really try to make that connection to the company that you're applying to. So here's some cover letter examples. And the one on the left and the one on the right. Now, they are both very good cover letters. You can see they're formatted for the most part okay. Um, but I would say go for the one on the left-hand side from Justin Sample. And the reason why we don't want to go with the one on the right-hand side by Martin Lane is the applicant tracking system. And very similar to your resume. So if you attended our resume basics class a couple weeks ago, you learned a little bit more about the applicant tracking system. If you haven't, please check our YouTube channel. We have a whole job seeker playlist, and it is right there at the top. We'll go over the applicant tracking system, but just in a brief nutshell, the applicant tracking system is a computer software that employers use to scan applications. And what this software does is it scans all documents that you submit. So your cover letter, resume, any sort of reference documents, all of that stuff. And it scans it for keywords and it compares it to keywords in the job description. Now, with that being said, it sounds like some very fancy technology, but it hasn't gotten to the stage where it can read fancy formatting. So that's why we say don't go for the right-hand side one because it won't read anything in that dark colored box at the top or any of those fancy color lines. And it will look as if you're submitting a blank document because how some of the softwares work is it scans the document line by line until it can't read something. And then once it can't read something, then it just makes the rest blank. So we don't want right at the top with that dark blue box with your email, your location, any social media handles. If it can't read that, and then the rest is a blank document, all of the core work that you put into that cover letter is not going to be read. While on the left-hand side with the letter from Justin Sample, there's no fancy formatting, maybe spaces here and there, like in between the phone number and email address, and that's totally okay. But with it doesn't have any of those darker boxes, no lines, nothing like that. And your resume should be formatted in a very similar sense too. Very plain, very simple. very corporate-esque is kind of what we are looking for with your resume and cover letter, just to ensure that you get through that applicant tracking system, because that's the goal of submitting your resume and cover letter is to get you to that interview. And then once you're in that interview, that's when you let your personality shine. So we just need to make sure we're following all of the examples and all the little tips and tricks to make sure that you get to that interview. So now we've seen some examples. We've gone over what the purpose of a cover letter is and why we want to tailor it to the job that we're looking for. So now let's go through how we structure a cover letter. So the contact, so the header of a cover letter should include the contact information for both you and the employer. So how we have it formatted here is your name, your phone number, and your email address is centered. And then you can have today's date, the hiring manager's name if you know it. If not, it is a-okay to say hiring manager. The company name, the company address, and then the company city, state, and zip. Now, with this part that we have centered, so one thing that we talk about too in when you are looking for a job and when you are submitting all these documents is something that we call your professional brand. And that is not only your image or what you're trying to convey on any documents that you're submitting for consideration for a job, but it's you yourself too. So the you yourself part comes in at the interview. So that's where we really focus on your professional brand. But like I said, submitting your cover letter and your resume, that's to get you to the interview. So your professional brand starts from the very beginning. Now, your name, your phone number, and your email address, that part should be consistent on all the documents that you are submitting. So what I usually recommend is have your resume up as you're writing your cover letter and just copy it from one document to the other, just to make sure that you have that brand consistency. You don't want to have your contact information formatted one way on your resume and a different way on a cover letter, and then a different way on a reference document, and a different way on any other documentation that the hiring company is looking for. You want to keep that the same all the way through. Okay, so now the salutation and the introduction. Um, so the salutation is just dear and then the hiring manager's name. Again, if you don't know the hiring manager's name, that is a-okay. You can say just dear hiring manager. Just something to have in that salutation that acknowledges that this is going to another individual. You don't want to just say like to whom it may concern or something along those lines. Just saying dear and the hiring manager is perfect. And in the introduction, you want to state the position you're applying for, where you heard about the position, and close with stating why you are interested in the position and why you would be the best fit for this position. And we want to do that because these recruiters and these hiring managers may be hiring for many positions. So you don't want to get lost in the shuffle of if you're applying for a customer service type position and then they're also hiring for a manager role, you don't want to get accidentally mixed into the wrong pile. And then as the hiring manager is reviewing, they come across your application and see like, oh, you might not fit all the qualifications for this manager role, but you didn't initially want to apply for that role. So that's why we really want to state what position you're applying for. And also where you heard about the position, because that helps recruiters know how their recruitment tactics are working. Did you find it on Indeed? Did you find it on a specialty job board? Like here in libraries, we have a specialty job board on it's called our Rails job board. So did you find it on Rails, or did you find it on Career Builder or or the company website, those types of things? You just want to let them know where they found it. So in this example, the individual states that they're very interested in obtaining a business associate position within ZYX Consulting. And then they talked about some their interactions with recruiters at their university career fair, and how it convinced them that their organization would be a great place to work and would provide them with opportunities to utilize their skills in the consulting industry. That is awesome because now the recruiter that they probably talked to at this career fair is now reviewing their application. And now that recruiter is making a decision or a mental image in their head of who they're now talking to again. They're like, oh, I do remember talking to this individual at that career fair. I did like them. We can move them to the next stage pile. And then also this individual just hit it home by saying that they thrive in a challenge and look forward to the opportunities with collaborating with top business leaders. So stating that this organization is working with top business leaders, they're up for a challenge, they like that. Um, that is perfect. It shows their drive. And as a business associate at a consulting firm, you're hustling. So um, stating that they're interested in that hustle and that challenge is something that the recruiter might be looking for. Alrighty. So the body paragraphs. This is the core part of your cover letter. So body paragraphs, you want to tailor your skills and your experiences and accomplishments to the role that you're applying for. So for example, if one of the skills that you have in your previous jobs isn't necessarily directly applied to the job that you're applying for, I wouldn't recommend adding that role unless you want to highlight a soft skill from that. So again, like those communication, organization, customer service type skills, that would be the way to frame that experience to the future employer. And then kind of answering the question, what if the roles that you're applying for don't match your job history? Again, that's a major question that I get when I work with job seekers, and the answer is those transferable skills. Um, if you take anything away from today's presentation, it's transferable skills, transferable skills, transferable skills. Those are going to be your way into connecting into any sort of industry. And it's those skills that are hard to train someone on and take a lot of time to train someone on. So employers, when they see a good experience of communication and organization and customer service, those types of skills, it saves them a lot of time, and it saves them a lot of time for training. And in business and in any jobs, time is money. So they're going to equate it as they're saving money by hiring you over someone who may not have those skills or maybe a little weaker in those skills. So here's what one of the body paragraphs as an example looks like. So you're a self-motivated or strong self-motivation has driven me to seek a wide variety of experiences throughout my college career by participating in the Walt Disney College program and studying abroad in Barcelona, Spain. I've had the opportunity to perfect my communication skills and enhance my ability to work with a diverse group of people. I feel that these skills are integral to consulting because of the importance of teamwork and strong client relationships. Furthermore, through my internships, I have developed tactics to analyze business issues by researching and reviewing data. I will continue to strengthen these skills as a student consultant with the Midwest Business Consulting this semester. With my strong analytic background and exceptional communication skills, I feel that I would be an ideal candidate for the business associate program. Wow, that is awesome with this example. But let's take it line by line. So they're stating that they're a self-motivated individual, and that's what drove them throughout their college career. Self-motivation is going to be a huge skill for this role. So they really hit it home where they wanted to state that right off the bat. And then they stated some experiences that may not be directly with consulting, like the Walt Disney College program and studying abroad, aren't necessarily a direct correlation with consulting, but then they took it with saying those opportunities is how they perfected their communication skills and their ability to work with a diverse group of people, which those two skills, communication and ability to work with a diverse group, are going to be crucial for a consulting role. And they stated that clearly in their body paragraph too. So even if the recruiter wasn't able to make that connection, the individual made that connection for the recruiter. And then they also stated an internship that they're going to be doing with the Midwest Business Consulting. So that's going to be their direct correlation to the job that they're applying for. They're going to be doing this internship while they're in school, and they wanted to really state that I might not be the best right now, but when I start, I will be because of this time that I have that and what I will be doing. So perfect, especially for someone in this sense where they are um, going to be a recent college grad, and this is probably they're applying for their first job after college. So really stating what they're doing while they're still in school is a great way to do that. If you are out of school or not soon to be graduating, a good way to kind of mix this in is any sort of um, continuing education that you're doing. And it doesn't have to be formal continuing education, like going back to community college and taking a course. It can be something like using one of the library databases that we have to increase your skills in Microsoft Office, or increase your customer service skills by watching some of our customer service videos that we have in one of our databases. Like it can be something as little as that, but still demonstrates big impact with the future employer. All right, so the conclusion. You want to reiterate your enthusiasm for the role. You can propose next steps for them. And then you definitely want to thank the reader for your cover letter. So you can see in here, enclosed is my resume for your review. I will contact in 2 weeks to make interview arrangements where I look forward to discussing the qualifications with you in further detail. Um, that that is a way to go with it, in this sense where they've probably talked to this recruiter a few times at the career fair, maybe another time through email, those kinds of things. So making those arrangements, I kind of go with the route of saying, should my qualifications meet the candidate you are looking for, please contact me at my phone number and email address. Thank you for your time and consideration. So that's kind of a softer way to go about discussing next steps with the recruiter, is saying, should my qualifications meet what you're looking for? Here's how you can reach out to me. But then you can follow up separately as well. You don't have to tell them you're going to be following up in 2 weeks. You can make a mental note saying in 2 weeks, I'm going to just follow up if I haven't heard anything about my application, and just re-stress how eager I am about this role, why I would be a good fit for it, and why you should pick me over someone else. So those types of things, they can be a little tricky. Crafting the wording of a cover letter and resume can be a little hard, especially if you're just starting out doing it. But that's why we're here to help you at the library. So feel free to make an appointment with me, and I can help you with the wording on your cover letter. And if you want to be bold like that too, I say go for it. See what the employer, you never know what the employer is going to be wanting and looking for. And sometimes it's just a little luck when it comes to your job search, where um, they might be like, okay, that was a little bold. I kind of like that. I want to talk to this person a little further. And then sometimes they may be like, oh, that was a little bold, a little forward. I am gonna put them into a different consideration pile for right now, because we have to remember recruiters have a lot to go through when they are filling positions. And just like your resume, they're only going to look at your cover letter for a couple of seconds. They're really just scanning it. Um, before they make a decision on whether to bring you in for an interview or to bring you in um, or to add you to a different consideration pile, I would say. Um, so that way, like we really want to be careful on how we're wording things. And then closing in your signature, this is the last step. Um, a question I get is, should you sign it or just type your name? Um, and this kind of goes back to the trends for since job searching has begun in time. Because before computers and before applicant tracking systems and before just applying online, individuals would go look for a job through the classified ads in the newspaper and go to that actual business or location and hand someone their cover letter and resume and say, I'm submitting my application. Those types of ways of applying are few and far between in today's day and age with applicant tracking systems and computers and the internet. If you are, but there are still some jobs out there that they say come in and submit an application that way. Um, if you are applying for a job that way, yes, sign your name in pen. It's called a wet signature, so just have a wet signature on there, and um, then you can submit your application. If you're submitting it online, like most applications will be, um, you can type your name. Some people will use a more cursive font for their name, and that is okay too in that sense. But I would say if you are doing a cursive font, underneath it, type your type your name out in the font that the rest of the document is in, just so that there is a clear sense as well. So as you can see, there is a little gap in between respectfully yours and your name. Some people, that's where you can put your cursive font, or that's where you can physically sign your name. But even if in both senses, still type out your name underneath, just so that it is clear to the recruiter who this application is about. Even though your name is at the top, we want to make sure it's clear one more time at the bottom. Um, and then that way, the recruiter knows who they are talking to. And it's clear sense too that if it goes through the applicant tracking system and it skips over that cursive font or the blank space, your name is still there in multiple areas. So now the next step is I've talked about how we can tailor your cover letter to the job you're applying for. Just like your resume and tailoring it to the job you're applying for, your cover letter should do the same. So kind of as we've been talking this morning, hopefully you've been getting the sense that your cover letter and your resume are two documents that they grow with you and they are very fluid and adaptable. So we want to make sure that every document that we're submitting for consideration for employment is tailored to the job that you are applying for. So let's go through how we can do that. So one is company research. And you might be saying, well, what is the best way to do company research? You can start off with a Google search. I always recommend going to the company website, checking their mission, vision, and values. Those are great senses and or great places to look in the sense like if you remember when we talked about the introductory paragraph and we said you want to list why this company is a better fit for you over their competitors. It might be their mission, their vision, and their values, and what they stand for as a company. Um, so those are great places to look as well. And then social media can also be a good place to take a look at it. See what they're posting about. Are they more generic? Are they posting at all? Smaller companies may not be posting as often as larger companies. And if you're looking at what I like to call the mega corporations like Coca-Cola, Facebook, any Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 company, because they have such a broad audience, their social media it remains very generic. So you may not get a lot from the social media channels for those types of companies. But check the comments of those postings. See what the public are saying. Especially if you're applying for a customer service type role, their customers are reaching out to them, or their customers are reaching out to them through their Facebook comments or their Instagram comments, and see what they're saying. Is it something that you are willing to take on? Is it something that seems like, okay, it seems to be generally positive, and it seems to be or it seems to be generally negative? Is that something that I'm okay in an environment to go into where um, the clientele of this company is not happy with the company right now? I will say, when you are checking the comments, treat it as everything else, where take it as a grain of salt, and you can see who an online troll might be, and saying like, okay, if this one individual is consistently writing a negative comment about their one experience that they had 5 years ago, that most likely will not be the case right now. It's just someone still just has that bad taste in their mouth, from that one experience. So take a look at the comments as a generalization rather than an exact. Another way to research a company is doing an employee and or a general review site. So Glassdoor is a great place to see how employees are feeling about their experience working for this organization. Um, Indeed and Yelp, and just like I said, a general Google search are also great places. You can check their reviews. Indeed oftentimes will reach out to former staff to like when they sign in and say, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience when you worked at this previous company that you worked for? Did you get a generous PTO package? Did you, like, was your sick time adequate? Did you have health insurance? Were you full-time, part-time? Were most positions there full-time or part-time? It goes through all of those questions. So then it kind of helps build a company profile for them. Yelp, a lot of people use Yelp to review companies. So if you're a public facing company or a local brick and mortar store, check their Yelp page and see what's there. Um, Again, to my previous comment, take all of these reviews with a grain of salt. For Glassdoor, you can tell who a disgruntled employee was. Maybe they had a bad exiting experience, or maybe something happened to them in the organization and they had to leave. It might just be an individual case at that point. But take a look at the general. If a lot of staff are saying, no, sick time was not adequate enough, we needed more and we asked for more, and the employer said no, that might be something to look for if sick time is important to you. Um, so yeah, it's one of those where you take a look at them, take a look at those company researches. You may hear about cool initiatives from any of these sites too, especially Google. If someone writes a Google review, sometimes the company will reply. So you can mention you really love how you are interacting with your customers, and that's why you want to work at this company. Whole number of reasons. Alrighty. So keywords, keywords, keywords. Uh, just like your resume, as I had mentioned earlier, your cover letter goes through an applicant tracking system, and it's checking those keywords and comparing it to the job description. You need a 50 to 80% match in all of the documents that you are getting. So total cover letter, resume, any other documents need to have a total of 50 to 80% match for your complete application to be seen by a human being. If you are under that 50%, you are most likely going to just be put into a different category into the applicant tracking system that won't be reviewed by an individual. Um, every applicant tracking system is different, and that's why we say it's a large range, because it also varies on position. For lower level, entry level positions, it's going to be closer to that 50%. For corporate executive levels, it's going to be closer to that 80%. Now, again, that also just depends on the hiring manager. I will use myself for from personal experience. When I was a hiring manager and we had the company I worked for used an applicant tracking system, I set my percentage to practically 0% because I was hiring entry level positions. And most of the job that I was applying for, the tasks and skills needed for that job, I could train someone on. But I really wanted someone with those soft skills. So I didn't want them to be discounted if they didn't have those harder skills that were in the job description. So I set my percentage a lot lower, which meant I got to see a lot more applications. But that was something that I was willing as a hiring manager to take on and review myself. Not every employer is going to be like that. I also was only filling for one role. We didn't have a recruiter who was trying to fill, or an internal recruiter who was trying to fill all our open positions and would be the first to review the application. It went to when someone submitted an application to where I worked, it went to me as the hiring manager, but also HR had it. And HR would just do a review saying, like, yes, this individual has not applied here before. There's nothing that we have noticed in previous interviews that other hiring managers have mentioned, those kinds of things. They, and then once that check cleared, then it would come to me to then make the decision on whether I wanted to come or have them come in for a phone interview or an in-person interview or any type of interview that I was doing at that stage of the hiring process. So that's why we have such a large range and say 50 to 80%, because that's where most employers are landing. You may find the lucky employer like myself who lowered the percentage. But that was just because it was a personal preference for me and wanted to make sure that I was seeing all applicants. Now, getting back to how can we identify what some keywords are in the job description. I like to use, oops, sorry, I like to use a word cloud generator. And you can just Google free word cloud generator, and it's the first one that comes up. And what it does is you can copy the job description into this text box, and it will count how many times a word appears in that job description. And then it kind of creates a visual effect of it, like a word cloud. And the larger the word is, the more times it appeared in that job description. And then we can infer that then there is a higher likelihood that that word is going to be a keyword that you would want to include in your resume. Now, some applicant tracking systems are a little bit naive to say in the sense. So this computer, like I said, this computer software isn't as intelligent as it's conveyed to be. And it can be as something as if this organization calls their customers guests, but you have customer in your resume and your cover letter, it will not make the connection that customer and guest are the same thing. It won't count that you have customer. So then what you would want to do is reformat your resume to every time where you say customer, or your resume and your cover letter, every time that you see the word customer, you want to reformat that sentence to include the word guest. Another example is some employers will list that they want skills in Microsoft Office. They will spell out the word Microsoft. Some employers will list it as MS Office. Match how you have that on your resume. Most of us have some level of skill in Microsoft Office and the Microsoft Office products. So we just want to make sure that we are matching what they are having in the job description. So if they are saying MS Office and you have Microsoft spelled out in your resume and your cover letter, switch it. Switch it to MS Office and vice versa. Because the applicant tracking system will not make that connection that they're the same thing. Alrighty. So crafting your cover letter. So whenever possible, address the hiring manager by name. And it can be at that in the introduction, in the header, in the salutation. If you know the hiring manager's name, go for it. Like go for it, list that name. If you don't know, like I had mentioned, that's okay. You can say dear hiring manager. Um, and that is how you can move on from that part of the resume or the cover letter. But if you can, mention it. We want to personalize your cover letter as much as possible to the company and the job that you're applying for. And you want to align your achievements and your skills with what the employer is looking for. And they let you know that in the job description. They may say, we're looking for a driven individual who has great customer service skills and is willing to take on any challenge. They just told you the exact candidate that they're looking for. So in your cover letter and your resume, how are you going to be or convey that you are the best driven individual who's willing to take on a challenge with the highest customer service skills? Okay, so now let's talk about some common mistakes that people make in their cover letters and how to avoid them. So some common mistakes are being too generic or repetitive. Um, some people submit very, very long letters. Try to stick to a page. Some people use more of a passive or formal tone, so they're too formal or passive on it. With your resume and cover letter, you are doing these actions, so we want to take more of an active voice the in the stories that you're conveying and the sentence structure that you're using. A big one is spelling and grammar errors. That is the number one reason that employers have stated to disqualify a candidate. If something is spelled incorrectly or improper grammar is being used, that is their quickest way to remove you as a candidate. So it's always good. Um, and we'll go over to do a spell check, do a grammar check. And the last thing is rehashing the resume instead of adding value. So some people in their cover letters will just copy and paste the bullet points in their resume, just removing the bullet point and having it as a sentence structure. Um, you don't want to do that. You want to add to those stories and add to some of those experiences. So, for example, um, if you were a part of a big project that your former employer was working on, and you took a larger role in that, you may have listed that you just took a large role in this project on your resume, but in your cover letter is where you can state what that project was, what your goals were with that project, what the result was from that project, what you learned from it. All of those things are great to include in your cover letter. So how to avoid them? So the mistake of being too generic or repetitive is formulate your cover letter to the job that you are applying for. Um, it's not going to include every detail on your resume, and that's okay. Every previous job that we have had um, is not going to be a direct application to the current job that we are applying for, and that's okay. We just want to make sure that what we are including is what the employer is directly looking for. So overly long letters. You only want to include the information that is most important to convey to the employer. Going back to those soft skills as the way to kind of make that connection. You don't need to list every time that you have demonstrated excellent customer service or excellent organization skills or excellent communication. One or two examples of that is perfect enough. Because like I said, the recruiter is only going to look at your cover letter and your resume for maybe 5 to 10 seconds before they make a decision on whether they want to bring you in for an interview or not. So really focusing on what is most important to them and including all of that information towards the top of your letter is the best way to go. The mistake of using a passive or formal tone. You want to write the letter in a professional and an active voice. So formal and professional, sometimes they're seen as synonyms, but um, it can be, you definitely want to stay more professional in your tone. So um, avoiding slang, avoiding any abbreviations that someone might not know, avoiding any acronyms. I work in an industry where we love an acronym. So in any cover letters that I'm writing, I don't include the acronym. I will spell out what that is if I want to include that. Or I will just talk about that experience in a general sense where I am not including that acronym. And you want to use an active voice because, like I mentioned earlier, you're the one who did this amazing work that you want to convey to your future employer. You don't want to take a passive backseat role in that. You may have been the one who was responsible for this task that you want to tell your future employer about. Be active about it. Don't take a back seat with it and be passive. Spelling and grammar errors. Use spell check. I always say also read it out loud as a review for your cover letter. It's only a page long, so you can read it out loud. And then that's also a way for you to see and hear any potential sentence mistakes that you have. Because you may have been really frantically typing out a thought, and in your mind, as you were typing it out, it made complete sense. And then when you read it out loud, you may realize like, oh, someone who wasn't with me as I was typing this or in my head will not know what I was talking about. So then that's your way to be like, okay, I need to go back and really make sure um, I am conveying my thought in a correct way that someone else will understand. Also have a friend or family member read it as well. I say as many eyes as you can get on this cover letter is great. Um, with the little caveat, the more eyes that you have someone look, or the more people you have look at a document, the more varying opinions you might get. So really make sure and remember you are the one applying for this job. You are at the helm of your entire job search process. It is your job to figure out when you're seeking feedback, which feedback you find to be most important and what you think you can get away with not doing. So remember that when you're asking others to help you out. And then lastly, a mistake that a lot of people make is rehashing your resume instead of adding value. So a way to avoid that is make sure that you are demonstrating the impact of the work that you did in your previous roles. So for example, if you were a customer service rep and your job was to answer the phones, don't just list that your job was to answer the phones. How what was your customer service score? Sometimes that is a metric that is kept by employers. Or did you constantly get positive feedback on your customer service? Or did you answer 100 calls a day? Did you were you responsible for maintaining the office space as well? And how did that impact general morale places? There's a million things that you can add. Um, with this, just like your resume, if you can put a number to it, do it. Because that then also helps someone who's maybe not familiar with the industry that you're coming from understand the impact of your work. So, for example, with that, I was a manager, you can say like managed a team of, or managed a team in responsible, who were responsible for XYZ task. Now I can say, if I was thinking about it and wanted to demonstrate impact, I can say managed a team of 40 staff who were responsible for XYZ task. Someone who may not be familiar with this industry that I'm coming from understands the impact of managing 40 people and the challenges and successes that come with that. So they're able to frame this picture a little bit better on you as a candidate than if you didn't include that number. So some things to remember, some topics that you want to include, the questions that they answer are why you're the best candidate, and why they're the best company that you want to work for. You want to highlight your experiences to showcase that you are the best candidate and emphasize your interest in the organization. Style wise, it should be in a narrative type style. You're telling stories about your work history and the work that you've done. And you want to match the tone of the organization and always be professional. The length of your resume should be no longer than 1 page, which hovers around 3 to 5 paragraphs. So if you wanted to have 2 body paragraphs, that's okay. If you had 2 different things that you really wanted to highlight, separate them into 2 different body paragraphs, or 3 things, 3 body paragraphs. But don't go over that page. Try so hard to stick to that 1 page. Font, you want to use the same font as your resume for that consistency across all your documents. Like again, that's that professional brand that we were talking about earlier with the header of our cover letter. You still want to use the same font and have consistency across all of your documents, because that is your brand that you are telling this future company about. And lastly is customize. You want to customize and tailor your cover letter to every position that you are applying for. People tend to apply for the jobs in a similar industry. So you can have maybe a customer service type resume if that's the industry you're going for, or a librarian type resume if you're applying for libraries. But you still want to customize that resume based on the exact job title that organization is hiring for. For example, I am technically a business librarian, but that is not my job title. My job title is a business services specialist. Here at the Addison Library, we call all our librarians specialists. So in my cover letter, when I was applying for this job, I did not list business librarian. I listed business services specialist because that's the job that they were applying for. I didn't want to misconvey the job that I was interested in, all of those things. But I went off of a quote unquote librarian cover letter that I had written. But then I went through and customized all of it. So lastly, I wanted to mention something new that we have here at the library. Some of you may be familiar with those yellow folders, which are our new job toolkit. Now all of that is online. So if you go to addisonlibrary.org /services /job seeker, you can view all of the resources that are included in that new job toolkits, including cover letter tips. So everything we went over today, we summarized and condensed into a 1 page handout. So you can go take a look at that when you are crafting your cover letter. So now I will open the floor to any questions that people have.